how does it work? How do you take an old building or a bare piece of land, and how do you work out how it costs? And then how do you work out if there's a market for it and if it's an economic outcome that's going to be worthwhile? I got really interested in all of that. And I got really interested in the sort of people that were doing property development. They're a really special group of people.
In this episode, we meet some property developers. What sort of people are they? What drives them? What's involved in property development? And what are the risks? And is this the best way to build our communities?
And I think there are two sorts of developers in there. And you've sort of got the romantic developer with a great vision who really want to do something like that. And then on the other hand, you tend to have the hardened developer who says, councils are all bastards, neighbours are a problem, I just want to build this thing which I can do and make a buck. That's what I do, let me get on with it, you know. So it's a very interesting dynamic, especially if you're on a council, to try to manage that process in a way that your community will accept.
Unquestionably, you want to make money out of whatever you do, but that shouldn't be ever your prime purpose in whatever you do in life. Your prime purpose should be to do a great job.
Dave Henderson is a twice bankrupted property developer who was previously involved in developments in Queenstown, Christchurch, Dunedin, and in Invercargill.
When it comes to being a developer, you know, one should first ask oneself what it means to do a great job. And I think what it means to do a great job is to create spaces that people can derive for many years to come great satisfaction or joy from either living in or shopping in or having their workspaces in.
John Darby is a prolific property developer who's played a major role in the development of Clearwater Golf Resort in Christchurch, Jacks Point in Queenstown, and Millbrook near Arrowtown, Omaha Beach, and the Denarau Resort in Fiji.
I think what attracted me to land development of the scale which we typically are working at is really the ability to deploy skills as a landscape architect. I was trained in that field and still use it and consider myself firstly a landscape architect rather than just developer. And that is where we can understand the many factors of the land and how we best manage it and allow people to settle. New Zealand's still a young country, we're still settling people and expanding our communities, so the real interest and challenge was the design, and that design being integrated with nature, really. So that's what excites me.
That might be what excites developers, but what keeps them awake at night?
Well, obviously, these large projects have high financial risk, so you are very tuned to market and circumstances, some of which are well beyond your control, like world events or the recent sort of reset in economic terms worldwide, all impact. So as a result, we are very conservative when we develop. We use our own capital and don't take, we hope, risks with other people's money.
It is a challenging environment to work on, and so what is important to understand is, first of all, you have to have someone with a vision to see, take a blank piece of land or an old building on it and create something. That's really visionary. Then you've got to go through the process and actually acquire the land and develop the concepts. Then you have to go through and get all the consenting and the master planning through council. Then you've got to go and secure financing. Then you've got to sell the product, and then you've got to build it, and finally when you get to build it. And so what's important to understand is that, you know, for some of these projects where you might be doing 500 to 1,000 houses, these are 10, 15-year projects. And so you've also got to take the risk of everything that can happen. The market might go up or the market might go down. You take all that risk. You have to, you know, you take risks because you can have delays either with consenting or with construction or with weather.
The allocation of capital is the key issue with respect to risk in property.
After a successful career as a private developer, Chris AIKEN moved to the public sector as the Chief Executive of a Housing New Zealand subsidiary, created to oversee the transformation of the former Hobsonville Air Base into a new town with homes for 11,000 Aucklanders.
Because it is a risky process, it attracts higher reward capital and funding. So what are those risks if you unpack them? Low equity in the projects, so there's not a lot of money before the bank. So they insist on a whole lot of measures such as rapid pre-sales, fixed price contracts to de-risk the process. That in turn drives profit risks. So if you fix a contract, fixed price contract now, you're going to pay a premium if there's changes, because the builder has to carry that contract through 3 years. So you're paying a premium. But because of the way you're funded, you've got no alternative, because the funder will want to see those fixed price contracts. Equally, if they want to see 40 to 60 to 70% pre-sales, and when I was developing, we were at 80% pre-sales for apartment, no other industry has to do that. If I was a car manufacturer, I'd get funding to create my 2-3 years of supply of cars. I don't have to pre-sell them all before I get the money in the bank. I can then move with the market.
You've got to be totally passionate to do it, because actually it doesn't make money at the moment. I'm still in a negative cash flow. Last month, 2 of my rates bills, I paid on my visa. That's how tight it can be for people like me. And everyone thinks, oh, you must be rolling in it. I wish I was.
Anthony GOUGH is a Christchurch rich lister and a property developer best known for his colourful suits and the Terrace Precinct, part of the Christchurch city rebuild after the 2011 earthquake.
It will get there, and I've got the confidence, and I see that, you know, to me there's that vision. It's got to stand out. I'm the terrace development, and it's all interlinked, lots of buildings. When you look at my logo, it's got gaps in all the letters, and the gaps talk about the gaps between the buildings, because everyone normally a gap in the building, that's where you throw the rubbish. No, they're the most important parts. That's extra street frontage, and people don't realise it.
Once upon a time, they were the people, this is sexist, we used to call the city fathers. They were the people who built the buildings, that housed the businesses, that created the jobs, you know, that built the wealth for the city. That's what they were. It's a respected thing. Something happened somewhere along the way. I think it came about as a result of the kind of modernist movement that swept across America, building motorways and creating these great big suburban sprawls. And in that moment of belief that that would make us happier than living in a more urban environment, a lot of people went for it.
You've got to look at the history of developers. So most of Georgian London was built by developers. And we look at London and say, aren't these beautiful squares? You know, they were green fields. I used to live in Soho, which was, you know, named after the hunting cry of the local lord as he used to gallop across the fields chasing hounds, yelling out Soho as he. Anyhow, so those green fields have been turned into one of the more densely packed areas, parts of London, Soho Square, various things like that. They're all built, well, north of there, Bedford Square is a classic developer-built piece of urban infrastructure. So I think that what happened there is the developers were actually the Duke of Bedford, the Duke of Gloucester, people like that who had money in the game, and they wanted to capitalise on their asset, and they built these beautiful brick-fronted buildings. Probably at the time, people probably thought, this is a tragedy. Where are those green fields? I can't live like in a town like this. But that's become, you know, something more than that over time. I think the problem with our New Zealand developers is they've got very little vision when it comes to housing. The developers of the big schemes in the cities are very keen to do some quite amazing schemes, but the developers for most suburban housing, they're pretty banal. The schemes are just banality upon banality. And so we need developers with a lot more vision. You know, Britomart was a development in Auckland done by a developer, and that's become one of the key places in Auckland as a sort of vibrant area, completely developer driven. And I think most people would say that's a fantastic result. But so we need our developers to have more vision.
But of course, in the modern world, these so-called city fathers and mothers have to contend with regulations and obtain permits, and deal with objections from other landowners and citizens. So how does Dave Henderson think that affects their approach?
What you're left with is you're left with a community of developers who are fundamentally bullies, because the only way to achieve your outcome with the RMA is to be a bully. You've got to go and bully everyone to get your development through. The second thing is that the best way to get your development through, other than being a bully, is to do something entirely vanilla. So the less creative you are, the more chance you've got of getting your development through. So we end up with a vanilla landscape. You know, the average person lacks conceptual skills, which is very sad. And so you can conceive something and you can lay it out, but you put those plans and drawings and even great 3D renderings in front of people, and they still can't get it. Unless you can properly conceive these things, you're not really well placed to pass judgment on them. So we have a whole bunch of people who can't conceive things, passing judgment on them. And so developers quickly learn that the best way to get somewhere is do something very simple, straightforward, and as I said, terribly vanilla.
You need people to take risk. They take a risk. Property development is one of those things that looks really easy until you try and do it. It's like international gymnastics. Always looks fabulously easy, and then you try and do a forward roll. It's not good.
Of course they take big risks. Lots of people take big risks. I don't give a toss about anybody's risk. In fact, it has absolutely no importance to me at all, their risk. We need them to develop. So there is a tension there, because they are only going to develop and take risks if they have the decent, the big rewards. But this sort of gambling game, is this a good way to run our communities? Is this the way into the future to make sure we deliver the best outcomes for communities and for for rescuing and restoring our environment? I don't think it's the right way at all.
I think where people get a bit lost with this is that it is a business like anybody else. There are high risks, and there are a number of organisations and companies that go bankrupt. So they do need to focus on making a profit, given the risks and the time frame and everything that goes with it. But I don't know of any developers that also don't want to drive past what they do and be proud, because guess what? When we build this stuff, it's sitting here for the next 50 years.
In 2 of our other episodes, we discuss in more detail the effectiveness of the Resource Management Act and what the average citizen can achieve in disputes with developers and councils.
This program was made possible by the RNZ NZ On Air Innovation Fund.